Hey love, welcome back to the Solar Clarity Podcast. I'm AP, and together we explore the journey from heart to harmony to horizon. Take a deep breath, settle in, and make this your space to heal, grow, and glow from the inside out. Take a moment to actually breathe in with me. Exhale. Settle wherever you are, into your body, into your truth, and into this space. Today's reflection is about something quiet, something many of us live even when we don't talk about it. It's called non-binary invisibility. It's that feeling of existing in between, in a world that loves its boxes and labels, its this or that logic. When you don't fit the binary, it can feel like the world doesn't quite know where to place you. And instead of being seen as whole, you become something to be translated, simplified, or even ignored. This isn't just about gender. It's about belonging, and what happens when even the spaces meant to hold you still blur your edges. So in this episode, we'll move through 3 layers. First, the social and cultural invisibility, then the emotional and systemic weight of being unseen, and finally, how we find presence again, that grounded knowing that no system or gaze can erase. Take one more breath. Let's begin. I am non-binary. If you didn't know that, hello. I'm AP. I go by they, them pronouns. I've been considering she, they pronouns, but I feel like that's because of some of the things we're going to talk about and how people view me, and it's a whole thing. But I feel like that's my main reason for wanting to add she, even though I'm more comfortable with my they, them pronouns. When people think about invisibility, they often imagine silence. But invisibility has sound. It's the noise of assumptions, the hum of misunderstanding, the static between who you are and who people think you are. Culturally, non-binary people sit in the tension between visibility and erasure. We're everywhere, in music, art, activism, online communities, and yet representation still comes filtered through a binary lens. Non-binary characters are often written as mystical, tragic, or comic relief, rarely just human. Even within queer media, non-binary stories are sometimes reduced to symbols, instead of being allowed to breathe as lived experiences. When you exist outside the binary, people tend to pull you toward one side. You're basically a woman. So you're kind of like a man? Or my personal favorite, oh, you're neither. That must be confusing. But it's not confusing to me. It's only confusing to a world that can't imagine fluidity as its own truth. The irony is, even in LGBTQ plus and so-called inclusive spaces, non-binary people can still feel like footnotes, like the plus in the acronym. We get invited to the table, but sometimes it's only so others can say they did. You might hear, everyone's welcome here. But then the language, the dress codes, the energy of the room still runs on binary wiring. And suddenly that welcome feels conditional. It's not always hostility. Sometimes it's erasure disguised as acceptance. When people say, women and non-binary people, or men and non-binary people, we become the hyphen, not the headline. We're always the afterthought, not the category. And that's the paradox of inclusion. You can be visible, but still unseen. Spoken of, but not spoken to. That's where the deeper kind of invisibility begins. Not in absence, but in misrecognition. When culture can't see you, sometimes you start to forget what it feels like to see yourself clearly. Invisibility can slip beneath the skin. It becomes translation fatigue. Always explaining, always correcting, so that others can fit you into the world they understand. It's not that I don't know who I am, it's that I'm tired of proving it. Over time, you start rehearsing your truth in simpler language, like translating poetry into bullet points, and something in you dulls. Because even when you know your own rhythm, you're forced to move to someone else's tempo. When invisibility seeps inward, it warps the mirror. You start seeing yourself through other people's confusion. You wonder, am I too fluid, too fixed, too feminine, too masculine, too much of something, not enough of something else? That's the trick of invisibility. It doesn't silence you outright, it quietly edits you out. You don't disappear because you left, you disappear because the world cropped you out of the frame. Even inclusive spaces can sting. You walk into a room that promises belonging and still feel like a guest in your own house. Smiles all around, but nobody says your name right. Nobody asks what they means to you. That's inclusive invisibility, not rejection, absorption. You blend in just enough to make others comfortable, and in the process, your edges blur. But invisibility doesn't only live in the heart, it's built into the structure of everyday life. Forms that still ask male or female. Bathrooms split by symbols, not by need. Systems that mark your pronouns as invalid input. Even when there's an X option, it often exists as decoration, not data. You're acknowledged, but not included. In healthcare, this can become dangerous. Doctors making assumptions about your body, therapists mistaking your clarity for confusion. When institutions define what's normal, everyone outside that boundary becomes an exception to manage, not a person to understand. Invisibility also lives in workplaces. Pride Month celebrations in June, and misgendered email signatures in July. Diversity slogans on the wall, but binary boxes in the HR software. Because if you're not counted, you're not considered. Erasure becomes policy. It's invisibility with paperwork. That's why visibility has to be more than symbols. It has to be structural. Representation needs to meet policy. Language needs to meet law. Otherwise, it's just a rainbow painted over the same binary code. So maybe the question isn't, how do we see non-binary people? Maybe it's, how do we build a world that moves like we do? Fluid, adaptive, alive, maybe? Let's take that breath with us into the final part of this reflection. Take a deep breath. Let your body settle into softness. We've explored the ache. Now let's find the light within. Presence isn't about being seen by everyone. It's about feeling seen by yourself. It's the quiet decision to exist, fully, unapologetically, and right here. For me, that means small acts of reclamation. Using my name with love. Writing they in ink like a spell. Wearing what feels like home on my skin. The world might not always recognize that, but my soul does. And that's enough. I go by AP. It is a non-gendered way of saying my actual name. I don't consider my name a dead name because people still call me that, at least my family and closer friends. But I will always present myself as AP. That's who I am. I don't outright hate my birth name. Hell, my name is actually in my new name. It's just a shortened version. I just prefer to be this person, a being, an inspiration, a leader, a risk taker. I'd rather be me than my genitals, than my chromosomes. Personally. Non-binary people have always existed in history and myth, in the spaces language couldn't touch. We're not new. We're not ancient continuities. The proof that existence itself is fluid. Maybe that's the gift of being non-binary. We remind the world that wholeness doesn't require halves, that life isn't a line to pick a side on. It's a spectrum that keeps breathing new colors. Everything is a spectrum. Everything has severity, length, strength, weakness, everything. To anyone listening who's ever felt unseen, you are not invisible. You are the space between. You are the pause that gives meaning to sound. You are not hard to see. The world just hasn't learned to look softly enough yet. Place your hand on your heart. Feel that rhythm? That's presence. That's proof. You don't have to prove your reality. You are a reality. Fluid, whole, and alive. Personally, I often find myself bending to what other people expect of me, and I kind of get uncomfortable when I have to go into detail about who I am and how I see myself. I'm a spiritual person. I believe that we're all just beings, spiritual beings having a human experience, learning the ways of life and how to navigate its complexities and finding meaning for ourselves. I don't look at color, gender, sex, race, whatever. I don't look at those things. I take what you say that you are and accept it wholly. And even if that comes with confusion, it's not supposed to always immediately be something that's understood. I know that. But I don't feel like you should fight for that understanding. Not within yourself and not within the people around you. It shouldn't be hard. Like, it should be a journey, of course, but it shouldn't be so fucking difficult that you feel like you're losing yourself instead of finding yourself. I am a non-binary person. They, them pronouns. And to be more specific, I am gender fluid. So depending on how I feel, if I feel like having more masculine energy, then I can present that way. If I feel like having more feminine energy, then I can present that way. If I feel like meshing the two in some weird cacophony of beautiful greatness, I will do that. I do not like to be put in boxes. I do not like to be something because someone else is uncomfortable. I love my individuality and I pride myself on that. And I believe that most non-binary people do. They love just being themselves without having to attach themselves to a gender, without having to focus on gender norms and forcing themselves into a box. we are all about love, of self, of the world, of everything that comes with those two things. That's what I believe non-binary is about. I do view it through a more spiritual lens. If any of you agree with that, you can comment, you could question it, throw out your concerns, whatever you need to do. We can have a conversation. We can enjoy these moments together. And we can learn. That's what all of this is for, to learn. And I'm grateful that I decided to create a platform where I can discuss me and where I'm coming from and what I believe and who I am, really. Just overall discussion. That's all I want. I feel like I'm going to keep saying that in every episode. This is about conversation. That's how we heal. And that's the goal at the end of the day. The in-between isn't emptiness. It's possibility. It's where creation begins, where light and shadow meet and decide to coexist. This is your clarity, your solar truth, your right to take up space. You've been listening to the Solar Clarity Podcast. I'm AP. Thank you for being here, for breathing through this space with me. Until next time, stay soft, stay seen, stay real. Bye.